go because we're running slightly late.
Before you start, Chris, can I just remind you to mute your microphone, please? Chris Crimmin.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you all. Welcome to our virtual meeting of the VEM Committee, Wednesday, the 10th of February. I do apologise to members of the public and to colleagues for the slightly later start. One or two of us had technical issues, but I will bounce breezily along into the first item, which is 786/20. And this is to receive declarations of any disclosable pecuniary interest. Now, as is my way, I'm happy to receive those now, colleagues, or when we arrive at the item. Does anybody have any interest to declare? Thank you. Silence is golden. I'll take that as a no at this point. 787/20. Apologies for absence. So over to Chris Crimmins, our Minutes Secretary. Chris, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, from Councillor Barretto. The earlier starting time means she's clashed with the meeting. So she gave her apologies.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And so, Chris, do I have every committee member in attendance? I don't need to know names. I just need to.
No, there are some missing. Councillor Jeremy's having trouble getting on. I'm just going to phone him in a moment, see if I can help him. Okay. But there are numbers missing.
That's sufficient. Thank you. And I'm all Councillor Jeremy's emailed me that he's trying to get into the meeting, so hopefully he'll join us soon. Thank you. Item 78820. This is the minutes from our meeting held on the 13th of January. They have been received by full council and be confirmed as a true record. I'm just going to run through those. I won't go through the attendees, colleagues, unless you're feeling particularly unkind to me. But we take page 1 and page 2. Can I move the minutes, please? A simple thumbs up on the screen will suffice.
So moved.
Yes. Thank you. Brenda and Chris, thank you. I can see Brenda and Chris.
Yes, thank you. But my camera's broken.
Ah, right. Okay. Thanks for letting us know, Chris. That's understandable. Thank you. Right. Swiftly on to 789. Actually, colleague, I'm going to apologise in my eagerness because we were slightly late in starting. There are 1 or 2 adaptations to the agenda today. So before I go any further deeper into the agenda, just to let you know, item 792/20, which is the website review, this has been moved to the end of our agenda, and this will follow item 799/20. And item 793/20, which is the application for waiver of hire fees. This item's been deferred because both applications require additional information than were provided on the application for the waivers, and they will come forward to us at our March meeting. Okay, and I do apologise, colleagues. I should have made you aware of that a little bit earlier. But I'm now going to move us on to 789/20, which is the marketing report, and hand you over to Tom Scott. Are you there, Tom?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm just trying to get the right screen up. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. So with the marketing report, that was all sent out with the documents as well, so you should all hopefully have those to hand. But to give you a verbal briefing on what's gone on with the marketing and how we're going to be going forward. So the video projects that were mentioned last week have unfortunately been put on hold for the time being because, of course, the lockdown has been restricted further and we're not able to meet with business owners at this time. I have, however, spoke with a couple of local business owners. So as soon as we're able to, I'll be able to get to filming some of those. We also have the Rotunda posters, which were discussed last VEM meeting. I have pretty much finalized those. I've wrote descriptions for the majority of it myself as well. And those are ready for councillors to take a look at them, which I will email out after the meeting. And hopefully see what they think, see if there's any issues they think need changing and so on. Regarding events coming up, we have been looking into the Thetford Talent Show, which we did as an online only event last year during the middle of the pandemic, which was highly successful. So I think it's prudent to do it again this year. And looking at but several avenues we can take in order to expand it, and not only that, but make it so it's ready to be a big event for the town and the council and the venue as soon as we exit lockdown, and we can get to hosting events offline as well. So that's still quite early days. We don't want to jump too fast on that and then have there be a massive gap between an online event and then there being a offline one. We want to make sure it's all a relatively cohesive singular event. Something that I've been doing over the past couple of weeks as well, as I've been doing archiving in King's House as part of my job for the past month or so. I've been putting together posts which sort of cover the town as it sits right now, and as well as pictures from the past. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of history in this town. We've got a lot of old pictures of, say, the high street and so on from 100 years ago even. So it's really good to sort of get that out, and it's just extra engagement for the council, and it's better than us just being a place of just pure information. It means that people have a reason to take a look at our page. Alongside that, we've had a bunch of positive posts go out, which a lot of them went out during the Christmas period, but we've got a lot of stuff go out more recently, which is even just pictures of the snowy landscapes, which aren't in this marketing report because that was from the most recent, from obviously a couple of days ago, which is after I wrote this. With our monthly observations, amusingly, the one that received the most engagement was the one regarding the traffic restrictions on Queensway, which, as is the nature of social media, things can occasionally take off and get a bit more attention than expected. This was because this is obviously something that affected a lot of people, so you had a lot of people discussing it. Other than that, the next highest post was the conservation efforts, which was a post written by Mark Webster, which received 8.4 views and over 1,000 engagements. But going back to the then and now posts, another really important thing to note is the way these posts were framed means that they received particularly high interaction, which is the most important thing. What we've been doing on these posts is we've been framing each post with a question, or generally some way for people to respond to the post. So, for example, would you like to see more posts like this? Do you remember anything from the high street, from that, you know, that's no longer there? Stuff like that. Things that make people engage with it, as you know, as would be explained by engagement. Means that we've gone up from the average, which is around 10% interaction, which is the pretty standard average, to over 70% interaction, which is pretty insane. Other than that, we've got the Guildhall website launch, which is being worked on predominantly by Joe, and the online educational content. So I don't know if Joe wanted to jump in on the Guildhall website. Right, and other than that, we have the data which is displayed at the bottom, which does show what I've said about the post engagement seeing quite a massive increase in comparison to the other areas. Obviously, it's quite tough for posts to stay high because the December and like early January period is where a lot of the Christmas stuff comes out, so that is usually a very high point. So to be able to keep our interactions as a whole pretty close to how it was in December is a pretty good achievement. And I believe that's everything. So if anyone has any questions, please ask away.
I'll open it out now to questions and comments, colleagues. If you say, those of you that I can see on the screen, if you put your hand up, or if you put your hands up in the chat, please. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, well, I'll kick off while people formulating their thoughts, Tom, on the Talking Up Thetford. We had a discussion last month when the marketing report come forward about expanding it beyond businesses. How's that progressing?
You mean regarding contacting like community groups?
There was a whole raft of things that come forward promoting the heritage side, because the natural amenity that we have quite a platform to offer. So not just promoting the businesses, but Thetford in a wider aspect, and that was discussed at last month's meeting. Yeah,
of course. In that regard, for now, I would like to keep this particular stuff focused on the businesses, because the original idea, when put forward a few months back, I believe by Councillor James, was to use the Talking Up Thetford to highlight businesses. But we have, obviously, as you say, we have a lot around the town, a lot of amenities, a lot of heritage, and all these things. So in that regard, I think it's definitely very valuable to provide content on that. But I think that as an item is best done as a separate series, so to speak.
Okay, well, I'm going to disagree, and I'm disappointed because it flies in the face of the conversation that we had at committee last month, and I'm going to ask colleagues to actually discuss this item there, because Talking Up Thetford, I accept where it came from, the original idea, but I thought we reached a place at last month's meeting where we were going to expand this to include more, to move beyond just businesses, quite rightly highlight businesses within the town. But my understanding of last month's meeting was that we were expanding this to pick up other aspects of life in Thetford. I've got a hands up. Brenda.
I think Chris was first.
I'll take. I can't see. Chris is in the chat, isn't he? Thank you, Chris. Then Brenda.
Now let Brenda go first. Ladies first.
Just one of you go first, please.
Last month when we was talking about it, there are a lot of businesses. Yes, I know we was trying to draw people into the town centre for them sort of businesses, but we was also talking about like gyms. They're still businesses. We was talking about dance schools. They're still businesses. There's businesses in the child borough. Well, there's businesses everywhere. There's businesses in the innovation centre. So basically, the Talking Up Thetford was going that one step beyond, and not just the town centre. I thought that's what we was agreeing to. And the other point is the Facebook page. And when we talk about history, I was wondering, Tom, whether you can get any old pictures from the Charles Bowell Museum, because they've probably got quite a lot in there that encourage people to visit the museum when they open. But they've probably got some old pictures there as well. Just a thought. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Before I come to you, Tom, I'll let Chris come in case there's a few questions you can wrap up in one here. Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I must admit, I agree with you. I think what we've been going through for the last year, the community groups in the town have really stepped up. And, and I think anything we can do to support and publicise their efforts is well worthwhile. And I think that is a good way to promote Thetford and the residents and the people who live here.
Thank you. Tom, do you want to come in on Brenda's specific questions?
With Brenda's questions, yeah, I would be making sure it is not focused entirely on the town centre. Obviously, the town centre is where a lot of stuff is focused, but as mentioned by all three of you, there are community groups that function in all areas. There are businesses that function in all areas of the town, and we don't want to neglect certain parts of the town just because it's not in the town centre. So we definitely would do that. As regarding the Charles Bowell Museum, yeah, I will definitely get in contact with them about some older pictures as well. The ones I've been using for the time being are just ones that I've managed to find from sorting out the archives. So I've got stuff scheduled there, but there's no reason why I can't get more ready on that front. Regarding your question, Mark, or your statement, Mark, and yours as well, Chris, if that is how the council wants it to go, then that is totally fine, and I can very easily get on that as well and make sure we've got focus towards the community groups within,
Thank you, Tom.
within the same umbrella, you know.
I think if you go back to last month's meeting, I think I provided a table with 10 suggestions as talking points on there. So we should have a record of that, not just community groups, but generally across our community, the various different bits, you know, celebrating what we have to offer. We have parts in Thetford, for instance. I know from a social media post I put out myself, the engagement that you get. This is going to lead me nicely into my second comment, actually. I put a post out on the Mayor's page on Sunday, and the reach was 7,000 people for a single post. And that was a picture of the Lady Gentle Meadows sign, which reached, uniformly. It was a positive post, highlighting a part of Thetford that most people walk past, don't realise is necessarily there. So I think there's opportunities for us to actually still be doing stuff in lockdown. You know, even within the current restrictions, and promoting the town out. And that, where this ties into my second comment I made on this, we also had a conversation last month about including all our channels in the reach. And I know from the evidence I'm looking at, we're still not including the Mayor's page, which should be. It is a channel for us to promote out. So can we start including the data from that page as well, please, and any other pages that we're operating, so we get a concise picture. I've got David's hand up. David?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just throw my sixpenneth into this? To be fair to Tom and Joe, we had a VEM team meeting yesterday where I prioritised a whole host of tasks that I scaled priority to, and unfortunately, because we are in this quite tight restrictions, there are elements of talking up Thetford that we might not be able to pursue at this moment in time. We have had a conversation with Mark's team of volunteers. They are still doing some great work around the town in the green spaces, and we could probably certainly get out and try and highlight what he's doing. But in terms of going into museums, Brenda, I can't for the life of me think that Charles Burrell would want us to go in at this moment in time with no clear indication of when they are going to reopen. In fact, where we talked about the rotunda fillers last month about trying to get some generic posters, and we contacted all three museums about information that Tom was going to put onto the poster, and we are yet to receive any responses from any of the three museums in the town. So I do take your point, but we do need to prioritise a lot of more important tasks, but we can certainly improve our coverage. The other thing is that Talking Up Thetford was originally, as Tom suggested, trying to improve the profile of businesses that were struggling and continuing under tight restrictions through COVID. Of all the councillors, there were only 3 or 4 that actually participated in that. So we do need to get councillors to prioritise that themselves, to liaise with our team to help us in that pursuit. Thank you.
Can I just state, Chair, that Councillor Rice has his hand up.
Thank you. Stuart?
Yeah, I think most of the points have already been covered. That yes, it is something we discussed last month, and I think it was just a general positive way of promoting the town. It didn't necessarily just have to be town centre businesses. David's right. Councillors themselves, I'm guilty in not getting out there and doing the face-to-face thing, but I have spoken to Joe to say that once things were reopening, I would be doing that to 2 or 3 businesses that I indicated to him. In terms of the museums, Again, I'm guilty of not giving him his paragraph for Dad's Army, but as you probably gather, we're still trying to work out when we will be open at the moment. And so I'll probably give him a little paragraph of when we are normally open, so that can be put up there. I think the advantage of these fillers are that they can be adapted at a reasonable cost without incurring too much. So yes, I'm supportive of the idea of getting the positive message out on all manner of ways we can, really. You're right, Mark, the Mayor's page is a very useful tool in promoting the town. It's, even more so with you unable to go out in the flesh to do that. The post that you put up was a sign, and like you say, there's lots of little quirky bits that can be put out there and draw people's attention and raise awareness of our hidden gems in the town. So yes, let's broaden it out, and thank David for the support.
So yeah, and sorry, because I don't want Tom to go away his head of bashing, but I actually think we're on the right track for this. Tommy, if you could, when you're talking about Thetford, maybe on your next report, just, and I fully accept David's quite right to highlight, we're within restrictions, so any activity is going to be restricted, following that. But maybe if you can add in something to there where you show us planned future activities, it doesn't necessarily mean that activity is going to happen, because we don't know what the next stage of lockdown is going to look like. But if we know what's coming up, it'd be quite useful for councillors to have an understanding, and also to meet the challenge, quite rightly, where officers are asking for a councillor engagement. Is there anything else on that item, please? I'm just looking. Sorry, I've seen it saying in the chat. I just checked that. Terry, you got your hands up.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm coming into it a bit late. I struggled to get into the meeting today. So apologies if I missed the sort of general thrust of the discussion. We are in a lockdown, and there are restrictions for getting out and about physically. But what I think it does do is give an opportunity to actually do a bit of a mapping exercise. Who are the groups and the businesses that we haven't thus far engaged with? And who are the key people that we need to talk to? And, what are their contact details? Can we have an initial phone conversation with them? Is this something that they would be interested in? It could be that actually they don't, as Stuart's just indicated, it's not something that we would prioritise for a particular group because it's more difficult. So you could almost, do all of the research, do all of the work, and come up with a bit of a plan. Who would you prioritise first, because they know that they are reopening or they've got a special event coming up, and who would you put towards the end of the list, for example? So I do accept there are there are difficulties, obviously, but the more forward planning that we can do now will pay dividends in the long run, because it is difficult running around contacting people and setting things up. So the more that you can do in advance, the better. As a general principle, I think, talking up Thetford in a general sense, the more groups and organisations that we're able to support and involve, the better. I've always been impressed with the sort of groups that we have in town. So I do support the idea that we make it more widely available if we can, and it is capacity dependent. I do appreciate that. We don't have a full-time video editor and interviewer, for example, so it is capacity dependent, and it's over a long period of time. It's not within the next month. Generally I support it, but let's do a bit of forward planning and a bit of mind mapping, if you like. But I appreciate the work that's been done so far. That's my view anyway.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else wishes to comment? Okay. Well, on that point, I think we've definitely given that a good old chat through. So I shall move the item on. I'm going to move on to item 790/20, which is our budget review. Now, you all would have had your papers sent through to you by Chris. So hopefully you've had the opportunity to read through. David, is there anything you specifically want to bring to the attention of the committee?
Not particularly, Chair. There's been very little activity and movement on the budget from last month because of the restrictions to our opening. So just open to questions, actually.
Okay, well, it's open to question, colleagues. While I've got you there, Dave, can I just ask a couple of, I think these big, nice, quick, simple answers, these ones, and it ties into the previous item, actually. The top two lines, bar fees and room hire. Understandably, on the bar fees, the events didn't happen. And on the Carnegie room hire, we have our hire rate has not been as great. Again, we know what's affecting that. Are we? Do we have any plans in place to mitigate or to change that situation on both those items?
It's difficult in terms of both those items simply because we are restricted in doing the kind of events that that we can. In terms of Carnegie room hire, the only real hirer that we have in the building at the moment is the NHS blood donors unit. They actually have contacted us in recent weeks to say that, you know, everybody's in the same boat. You know, local village halls, etc., around the region, they have different restrictions or self-imposed restrictions that they don't want anybody in the building. We are a bigger venue. We are able to cater for them. So there are several other sessions that we are facilitating over the next few weeks to try and help those out. So, for instance, if they did have a blood donor session that's, you know, literally 10 miles from our doorstep, they would redivert those donors to the Carnegie in the future. So we've got some additional hires in that respect. The one that you see in terms of the comments against that is it was hoped that some outdoor events in King's House Gardens but they did not happen. And that's because we tried to mitigate some of the events that we'd planned in the Carnegie by transferring them to an outdoor venue in King's House Gardens. But then restrictions became obviously more stringent and we couldn't even deliver those. So it's difficult, but we are looking at ways all of the time. And as you'll see later on in the agenda, there's an item about how we're looking to plan the eventual reopening, and we are putting together various different events that we can almost pick off the shelf fairly quickly to get us up and running when we physically can.
Thank you, David, and I realise that was a difficult question, so thank you for the succinct answer. Colleagues, is anybody else wish to make a comment on the budget? I can see Dennis shaking his head. I'm going to come in with another question, David, that's okay. 4240. So we've seen a decline in the market fees. We're restricted at the moment to essential traders on the marketplace, if my memory serves me correct. So is that, I should imagine that's linked?
That is indeed, Chair. And in fact, currently we have two traders that are attending, the fruit and veg, which are different traders from Tuesday to Saturday, and the fishmonger, which is the same on both Tuesday and Saturday. In fact, we do have a couple of other traders that legitimately would be able to trade, but they do come from a great distance, and they have taken it upon themselves to think that because there are no shops in the town, or very few shops in the town that are open, they've taken it on themselves not to attend because they don't think it's going to be financially viable. In fact, this Tuesday, yesterday, our fruit and veg trader did not attend. He gave us notice prior to that to say that he's now experiencing stock issues. So we may even be down to one trader for the foreseeable future until these restrictions are lifted. So it's a bit of a dire situation, but that's reflected in the budget, I'm afraid.
No, thank you for that, David. Can I make a suggestion? And this ties into Tom's marketing report. can we do something with those two traders to promote them via social media, just to make the wider public aware that they're still there, still trading, and need the support?
Absolutely, will do.
Thank you, thank you. Colleagues, guys, is there anything else you wish to discuss on this item? I can see Dennis vigorously shaking his head, so I presume Dennis is speaking for you all there, because you've all gone quiet. Okay, well, I'm going to move on in the light of no further questions. We're on now to item 791/20, communication of key dates in the global calendar. Now, this item's been brought forward. We often, throughout the calendar year, there are significant dates that get marked formally by local authorities. Those of you that are district and county councillors will know that they, for instance, mark Commonwealth Day, National Arms Covenants Day. And then there's the opportunity as well to mark moments of strike the national consciousness, and the opposite example was the recent passing of Captain Sir Tom Moore, where a lot of local authorities, and I believe even the palace, flew its flag at half-mast. So this is this item, as I understand it, is about how we, as a town council, recognise and communicate supports for key dates in the global calendar. Before I open it out, David, is there anything you wish to say on this before it goes out to colleagues?
Only in as much as I didn't really know where this was offered up by one of the councillors, and I think it's a good idea in principle. I think we could have a bit of fun with some of the items, and also support a very serious message in terms of others. So it was me that actually put it into the slide, those three examples, just as a discussion point. So yeah, just throw it open to, and I think Tom made some observations when we were talking within the office yesterday, so I don't know whether he wants to make a few comments, but yeah, open to discussion really.
Thank you. I'm going to move to Chris, but I will mention David and I discussed this item, and I'm really disappointed not to see National Redhead Day on there, David.
We can certainly put that on for Friday if you want, Chair.
Thank you very much. Chris.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I sort of mentioned this to yourself earlier. I've always wondered why, as a town council, we never celebrate the Holocaust Day. To my mind, this is something really vital, especially as the actual physical memory of the people who can remember this is beginning to go, and we need to educate our young ones to make sure they never forget this period in our time. Why do we not celebrate Holocaust Day? As a town council, we do Commonwealth Day, the Britain, etc., etc. Why not Holocaust Day? It's just, it's just a thought I've had over the last 5 years.
Thank you. I've got Tom next. Before I go to Tom, I'm just going to suggest we need to break this down as an item. The question is to discuss and agree how we recognise and communicate support key dates. So, first of all, is to get the buy-in. Is this something we wish to pursue? The next question is how, and then it's those events and those particular dates that you would like to, support. And I think we would need to take this to full council to have the buy-in, the colleagues that are not on the committee, and also somewhere in there would need to be a policy regarding how we mark those informal occasions, as I highlighted with Captain Sir Tom Moore's passing. Now, as I've seen the hands go up, I see Tom, Brenda, Stuart and Dennis. In that order, please. Tom.
Right then, so with this being obviously something that would go on social media, I made a few observations to David yesterday when we were discussing it. I think it's a great idea, and it's definitely something that can be done to sort of allow us a better communication with the community as the town council, and it also gives us the opportunity to share things. So, for example, during Black History Month last year, I used that opportunity to share the history on Dr. Alan Mims. Posts in that vein would all be possible, and I'm not sure exactly how we all want, what sort of dates we're all looking at. You've obviously outlined it now. I was sort of working a bit blind beforehand, but what we would need to do is, because I doubt anyone is going to be against this, what we would need to do is to outline what dates we want to work with, because if you really want to, you could in theory fill every day with a because every day is a recognition day of something, or considered a special day of some sort. So you would need to outline which ones you consider important for us to tackle. Would that being, say, Mental Health Week, as Chris mentioned, Holocaust Day. You want to outline that as well. So you want to outline these key dates, and then what can be done with those is they can be scheduled well in advance. So we make sure something goes out for those dates, and then with the more informal ones, that will be more of a case-by-case basis. But I think it is just important for us to outline what ones we want to actually focus on as a local authority.
Brenda. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, Tom answered my question. Obviously, once you've worked out what you want to do for the year and what you want to highlight, because if not, you've got the staff running about, not sure what they're doing, and then they miss something, and then we say, why did you miss that? So Tom's explained about the planning side. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Dennis?
I'm like Brenda. I'm afraid Tom covered most of what I was going to say. And I do think you're right. We need to take this back to the full council and everything, and compile a proper list of things that are of importance, like Holocaust Day and everything. So most of mine's been covered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dennis. Stuart?
Yeah, I think you're right. We need to get the whole list of stuff for the whole year done, and then prioritise the things. So obviously things like Battle of Britain Day, we have the Battle of Britain service, and then obviously some of these things are more just paying respect to it, but using it as an opportunity. World Book Day, you can do just a post on your social media. The library do stuff already, I suspect, and working with them. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we can help them promote their stuff, but also have a little light-hearted moment, to celebrate World Book Day. We put a post out, of a town book or something like that. So yeah, let's get a list done and then give them like 3 priorities, and because we don't want to spend too much on some of the lesser events, but at the same time they are opportunities where, for the sake of a post, can get us engaged a bit more. In terms of the Holocaust, just make people aware the town is represented at the Norwich Holocaust Memorial Service, and Mike Brindle stood in for you this year, Mark, and I've done it in the past, and we do pay reference to it, but I do accept that we probably do need to up our game in that respect, because Chris is right. We have the duty to carry this forward for future generations. Thank you.
Terry?
Yeah, and in danger of saying what's already been said, but it amused me because one of my jobs in years gone by, when I worked for the member of the European Parliament for Eastern Region, was to track all of these days in the calendar, so that he could attend events and post things on social media and that sort of thing. And Tom's absolutely right. You could have sort of something every single day of the year if you wanted, sort of world commemoration of the donut type event. So I do think we need to go through and do it in a sort of timely way, so that we have stuff throughout the year, rather than all concentrated in certain months. But I do think we have to sort of track them against, our sort of local priorities and sort of local heritage, if you like. Black History Month in October, Alan Mims, and how that relates to Thetford. I think that was a really good post last year when that went out. Could be, the other day, I think it was yesterday actually, the anniversary of Thomas Paine's birth, and actually sort of think about how it relates to Thetford and the message that we want to send out. World Book Day, I suppose, could be Rights of Man, I suppose, I don't know, but keeping it relevant, I think, is key. and some serious. Holocaust Memorial, for example, I think is a good one to do a bit more about, but also some light-hearted ones. Apart from the one you suggested, Mr. Mayor, we don't want that one. But other than that, I'll shut up.
Yeah, I think you should. Thank you. So I think we've answered the first part of the question. Is this something we'd like to pursue? I think that's a resounding yes across the committee. I think there's some work to be done on the specific dates that we highlight, and also how, because we quite rightly we're identifying social media, but there are some events where we actually acknowledge the raising and lowering of a flag. So, David, are you happy to bring back a draft report next month on this specific item? We're quite happy to work with you and the team on this, where we bring back suggested commemorative dates for committee to discuss, accompanied with whether it's going to be commemorated social media, offline, or a mix of both. And then the members, the challenge for us is to actually feed into the team, you know, the events you would wish to be considered.
Yes, Chair, I'm very happy to take that as an action from today's meeting, and I think you're quite right. There should be a sort of a two-pronged coverage in that report. One, identify those dates that we actually do physically commemorate it, like the raising of the flag for the Commonwealth Day, Remembrance Day, etc., Battle of Britain. And are there any other key dates that, as Councillor Harvey mentioned, that as a council we would like to probably develop that into a more important occasion? And then there's almost the secondary stage of those dates that we still value and think are important, but sometimes we can have a little bit of fun with. But also still have a serious side to it. So International Mental Health Day, for instance, we could just use that as a secondary social media prompt, but also highlight the valuable work that various different local groups do in that context. So we are giving it a local theme as well. So I'm quite happy to draft a report and bring it back. But what I'll do is I'll try and collate some of the more important dates that we actually commemorate and try and get the feedback from all councillors.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got Dennis, then Brenda. Dennis?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. No, mine's not about this thing. I've listened, very interesting. I like the ideas, but is there any, I don't know what I've done, but I'm on marketing reports still. It doesn't seem to be moving forward, the agenda for me. So, and I like having it in front of me because I'm old.
You might need to refresh your page, Dennis, because I'm sure one of this is the same for everybody else. I can actually see the item we're discussing, 79120 on the screen.
So it's me. Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll do what you suggested. Thank you.
Please let us know if you have any other issues.
Thank you very much.
Brenda.
Yeah, thanks for Dave's feedback there, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a great idea, and when there is big themes going on, a lot of the times the schools actually do it, so we could celebrate what the schools are doing, so we're working with them. And it's like World Poetry Day, where you put out on Facebook it's World Poetry Day, and then somebody writes a little poem, you know, and then somebody else adds theirs. And I just think it's an opportunity to get people engaging with each other as well. So, yeah, I love the idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. So we've got an action coming out of this item, which is great. It's going to come back to us at next month's meeting. And part of that is that we feed in to enable the officers to produce that report. Can I ask colleagues to give their comments and feedback by no later than the 28th of February? It gives the officers 2 clear weeks to provide the report or produce the report ahead of the meeting. That seems like a reasonable timeline if all are in agreement. I'll take silence as read, and I can see Dennis nodding. So thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda. Your hand's still up, Brenda. I weren't too sure you wish to speak.
Okay,
again.
I'll take it down.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm going to move the item on. And as you know, we've adjusted the agenda items. So 792 we will receive at the end of the meeting, and 793 has been deferred. So we now move on to 794/20, which is the marketplace commercialisation, and we're going to discuss the opportunities to develop the commercial projects going forward. Over to you, David.
So the report was uploaded and circulated with the agenda items, so I will just take some questions from that report after just a brief intro. The report did actually rationalise the fact that there is another working group that's been stood up by the VEM Committee. They met last week and actually defined their specific aims and objectives, which allows that group now to focus on two points, which is basically an immediate action to try and seek and source quotes for 4 electrical supply pillars for the pillars for the marketplace. So that is something that will impact on the marketplace commercialisation for ourselves to look at in the future. But also the initial working group meeting sort of looked at a wider and bigger vision for not just the marketplace, but for the immediate area of lower market and the venues, etc. That was brought back into a more specific focus on the marketplace. So that particular working group will meet very soon to further those discussions and suggestions, ready to report back to ALP. In terms of our work, it's very much aligned to what they may well come up with, simply because, for instance, the additional electricity supply points will have a significant impact on what we can do to generate further commercial income. The Guildhall Heritage Hub and Marketplace survey that went out last summer actually talked about how we have committed through our National Lottery Fund grant to various different specialist markets. Now, again, they can be significantly improved, and we can attract a more diverse trader to those kind of specialist markets in the future, simply by having those additional electric hookup points. So what can we do in the immediate future? Well, we can look at those specialist markets. The survey that I mentioned just a few seconds ago actually requested that we bring back things like the former night markets, which were successful. We can also bring a Christmas market to town potentially in the future, and also have that located on the marketplace. But really, we do have to understand what that working group will put forward. One of the other issues that they did talk about, which was heavily supported in the public survey, was to potentially close down the marketplace and have it as a public realm space, a pedestrianised space. And if that does happen, then again, that will significantly improve our viability, for instance, of delivering the Guildhall tea room. Our tenants in the shambles, as you can see in the left-hand picture of the slide, will have a much improved trading environment without that being a car park for 5 days. So we're almost sort of at a catch-22. We need some of the work to be done by that working group, and then we can continue to further our commercial objectives from that. But certainly there are things that we can pursue in the meantime, which are markets and events from time to time, which we have done in the past. So just open to the councillors now to get some feedback from the initial report.
Thank you. I'm opening it out, colleagues, to question or comments. Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, David, I think that you're right in noting there's a bit of overlap between the ALP committee looking at this, but from this VEM thing, we want to try and get as much going as possible. As you say, once we've got those electric points in place, then you can start delivering a lot of the stuff. The night markets and that, I think it's a great idea. I've been supportive over the years, and I think it's something that makes the town a lot more vibrant if we have things like that happening. Obviously, what we don't want to do is go against anything that's going on down on the green if that happens ever again. So some things to bear in mind, but let's get it planned in. Night markets is something you can deliver, especially Christmas market. Hopefully we're going to be in a lot better position than we are today. You're right. I think the steer was from the last ALP committee that we were content in the idea of exploring the idea that the marketplace would not reopen to cars. And I think that gives us great opportunities to drive this forward, getting more and more things happening in this space. Longer term, we'd probably need some capital investments to make the most use of the space. But in the shorter term, once you do have the green light to use the space, you can get your night markets and that up and running in the short term as soon as our COVID regulations allow. But yeah, let's go for it.
Thank you, sir. Dennis.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm on the ALP committee as well, and the people affected in the survey seem to be much in favour of us closing the space and utilising it for the town. I'm looking at some of these little market stall things here, and they look good. I think it's a no-brainer. We should go ahead. And I'm all in favour of doing the lower market too. The bigger market we have, the better the town will look in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. And that's a really good point you make, the linkage between the lower and the upper market and the space in between. If we're mindful to go this way, then we need to do it as one piece rather than piecemeal. Do I have anybody else that wishes to speak?
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back in that, because the next slide actually shows that I think there was a piece of work that was covered 10 to 12 years ago, and this was a piece of work that included looking at the Carnegie, the Guildhall, the marketplace, the lower market, the whole environment around this area. And although I understand where councillors were coming from in terms of the initial working group to try and look at a bigger piece, we do need to focus on the marketplace, and that was our steer from ALP last week. But it's not to say that we couldn't look at a supplementary project in that lower market area. But this was an element of that previous consultation that was delivered to the council. And I think because it was such a big project, I mean, Stuart and Terry were councillors at that time, the amount of money that it would have taken to implement all of the suggestions, we basically did very few, if any, and we did not complete the total rebuild of the Carnegie. So we've now embarked on 10 years of refurbishment, and we've made some huge improvements. We're now going through a major refurbishment and improvement of the Guildhall, which is a massive positive. But in terms of the marketplace, it's not something that we haven't discussed in the past. So I think we need to keep it realistic. But certainly there are a lot of opportunities open to us if we pursue it in various different ways. And as was mentioned in ALP last week, it doesn't stop us temporarily closing the marketplace, which we are owners of, the landlords of, to deliver those events that we've already discussed. So it's not that we can't do anything. We certainly will be pursuing those events in the near future.
Thank you. Dennis, is your hand up from a previous? Dennis?
Goodness.
Is your hand up to comment again, Dennis?
My mic won't on. My mic. Can you hear me now?
Yes, carry on, Dennis.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please speak. Okay, well, I'm not quite sure what's happened to Dennis there, but David, your first slide, you was looking for a decision. Can you reiterate the decision you're looking from councillors?
So basically, it's just to endorse any next step actions. There's certainly not any decisions that we can undertake at the moment. So we could look at trying to develop a program of events that we can physically deliver in the context of the car park and close down that as and when needed. But we also, and there are several councillors that are on both ALP and VEM that are on that working group. So it almost means that we have a continued update potentially to VEM to keep us in the loop in terms of what the working group decide on improvements, and we can then further as we go our commercialisation objectives going forward. Some of these items in the slides will dictate only if the marketplace is closed down, but it's not going to preclude everything. So I think it's just basic actions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and the working group are looking at this space anyway. It's funny because it does sit across the two committees and help leading this. We've got the chair of ALP with us today. Can I just check in with Councillor Jeremy? He's happy for as and when the working group to feed in and update them.
Yeah, very happy. There's obvious crossover from an events point of view. I think both committees need to be aware, and so therefore updates are useful for both. So
thank you for that, Terry, and it's quite useful because I also sit on that working group. So the working group can feed back in, but I think the overall consensus, if I'm reading it right, is people are happy for this work to continue and explore the opportunities for this space. And I've either stunned you into silence or you all agree.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, well, I've got nobody wishing to speak further on that matter, so I will close that item out. Thank you, colleagues. We're moving on to item 795/20, which is the Guildhall Heritage Hub. And this is the discuss and agree develop the opportunities for a newly refurbished Guildhall. Over to you again, David.
So I just want to take you through some slides just to firstly give you a bit of an update of status of refurbishment works, and also some of the areas of opportunity and decisions that we need to make going forward. So apologies to those councillors who have sat on other committees and seen this presentation in a slightly different guise. But in terms of the Guildhall, it's very near completion, and to look at the external elements of the ramp and steps, you may not think that, but I've had a meeting this week with the architect. There was a slight delay because there was a revision to the original drawings, and the revision was that we brought the ramp forward from the adjoining wall by 250 mil. And that momentous decision meant that we needed some additional stone coping stones to also be clad to a new additional wall. And unfortunately, again, probably COVID related, there was a 6-week lead-in time for that to happen. But if weather permits, and hopefully the contractors will be back on site next week, we should be able to push through from what looks like a big task outside the Guildhall at the moment to completion by certainly the early parts of April. So with that in in hand, we do need to start thinking in terms of completing some of the indoor areas. All the internal works are pretty much completed now. What we need to do is to complete the theming of the rooms. Also, the displays that we've agreed to do, and renaming and marketing the internal rooms. So let me just take you through the Guildhall entrance. You will see that there are areas within there. There's a new railing that goes along the ramp. In the old recess of the single door entrance, or one of the entrances, the single door one that goes into the large court, is now a dedicated display to Dr. Alan Glazer Minns, which we were agreed. And again, apart from decorating and actually physically putting the items of display in there, that's pretty much complete. The two other wall spaces, the middle one is opposite the old council chamber, and the other to the left as you exit the council chamber to go to the crossover bridge, where the town crest is embedded into the wall. There will be large scale wall imaged vinyls, which will depict marketplace, heritage marketplace activity, and also items dedicated to the civic and the old corporation building. So back to the small court. The work in progress in terms of naming is the Guildhall Tea Room, but we are open to suggestions, and we'll talk about that in a second. So we have physically moved the counters to enable us to utilise the door at the top corner there, which leads into the new servery. So that's going to create a vast improvement to our offer in the future. But it also keeps a big space in the centre of the room, which we can hopefully still accommodate 24 to 30 covers. One of the other things is it retains the superb feature, which is the judge's chair. And it's in a position now which enables it to be used as a photo opportunity. So again, great media opportunities in terms of that. The council chamber, and again, the working title is the Seat Room or the Julep Singh Room. We are at the moment brokering meetings with our Sikh partners to enable them to have a significant input into how they would see the displays in this room. You will see in the bottom left-hand corner, the cabinet that used to be in King's House Council Chamber has been moved to this room to accommodate some of those artifacts and displays that we may choose to display. The Guildhall Large Court, again, there's been redecoration and refurbishment. Underneath the balcony, there's a new purpose-built storage area, so we won't have chairs and tables leaned up against the walls anymore, which creates an untidy impression to hirers. They're all behind a beautifully panelled new installation. Some of the images that you see on the slide also will be replicated into large-scale acoustic art wall panels. They will be dual-purposed in terms of helping us tackle the acoustic issues that we have in the large court, because it's a large domed room, but also pay homage to our wider heritage offer. And VEM committed to commissioning those art panels last year. So Stuart Wright has been working with myself to try and develop these images, and that's going to be completed in the next couple of weeks. So the four spaces that we have within the Guildhall are the old small court, the old art gallery, the council chamber and large court. And one of the things that I would ask councillors to look at is to how we can rename and re-theme and rebrand those rooms. So we did have a discussion within Civic last week, and there were some suggestions around maybe rebranding the Guildhall Tea Room. And that did make sense, to be honest, because the building is the Guildhall. So maybe the room should have a different theme, well, it will have a different theme, but a different name and branding. So it could be the something tea room. The upper gallery again, it's a beautiful room, and it's a room that will be used in the future to host heritage events, exhibition events, small-scale meetings. And also, one of the things we're working with is the region schools. As Joe said earlier, he is working hard on creating a resource pack, and we will receive visiting schools in the future, and that will be their hub, if you like, to conduct some of the work when they're visiting the town centre and the Guildhall. The council chamber, the Julep Singh room, I think that's pretty much a given now. And the large court, again, we need to think about how we rename and rebrand that. There was a suggestion that we call it the Sir Joseph Williamson room. When this was mentioned in Civic, there were comments that there is a Williamson Hall in Thetford Grammar School. So there could be this confusion, if you like. And also the Guildhall Small Court has a plaque dedicated to Sir Joseph Williamson. When he bequeathed the money to the town on his death, it was used to build a courtroom within the Guildhall. And therefore the small court is synonymous with Williamson rather than the large court. But that is open to discussion. We'll come back to that in a second if I can just continue. So once we have agreed that and we have everything decorated, themed, displayed, etc., the opportunities within the building is huge in terms of the potential, and we can realise that potential when we have never been able to in the past, simply because access has always been a major issue. So for the large court, we're looking at civic events, makers markets, training days, exhibitions, but we can also now facilitate things like wedding ceremonies and small-scale wedding receptions, wakes, and also live performance. And one of the areas that we will look to rebrand in the future is a live performance listing of events under the overall banner of Guildhall Live. In terms of the tea room, we've revisited the timings. It's suggested that the timings in most of buildings similar to ours are pretty much given in and around the 9 o'clock through till 2:30 or 3 p.m. We do have market days on Tuesday and Saturday, and again for traders and early visitors to the market, we will open at 8 o'clock in the morning. But as you can see, as a tea room, we wouldn't physically open on a Wednesday and a Sunday, but on those days, the room could be used for additional events. Usually our civic receptions are held on Sundays. So again, we would like to use that room for civic events. So it makes sense not to be open to the public. But also we're able to do various different themed events on a Wednesday, such as poetry events, artisans in residence, etc., etc. So there's huge potential around the Guildhall, and the team have been working really hard on trying to revamp and revise the menus, but it is a tea room, so we do have to focus on what the public's expectations are around tea rooms, and the afternoon tea is a classic and a traditional fare. So again, we will have options around that. So the Julep Singh room, as I mentioned before, we are in wider discussions with the Sikh community and some of our Sikh partners, and they will steer us into areas where we should be making reference to the Julep Singh siblings, which is what we're going to focus on. And then the upper gallery, the old art gallery, if you like. Don't worry about the image. It's the best we could do. It's work in progress. The carpet is not there. It's going to be in the media suite and should be fitted actually this morning. And some of the furniture needs to be changed. But again, we have already had great feedback from groups that would like to utilise this room. As I've mentioned, it can be used as a classroom for visiting schools. It can be used for voluntary group meetings. We've been in touch with STAG, and we usually open up a venue to support the work of STAG. They're quite happy to use this facility in the future, and those dates are in the diary when they can actually physically meet. It could be used as an additional exhibition room for heritage events, certainly on Heritage Open Day weekends, but also a variety of workshops. So we have a real strong contingent of art and crafters that help us with a myriad of things to support our events. Again, we can use this as a dedicated facility at times for them. And there is a theatre group that wants to use it for workshops, etc. So again, potential is huge. So that's the end of that short presentation. Open to questions.
Have we lost the chairman?
You're still muted, Mark.
Only because I couldn't work the technology, Brenda. Over to you, then Stuart.
Oh, okay. No, it was just a brief. I think if we're naming rooms, I think we've got to make sure that we've got the information about that person in that room. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to me. So whatever it is, we've got to make sure that the information about that person is spread around that room. So I'm just saying, be aware.
So you're looking for a signpost within the near vicinity, highlighting why that room's called named in a certain way.
Well, if you call, if for example you called the tea rooms the Brenda Canham tea rooms, then you would have to have a little bit of my history around that room. If that, it's like the Dulip Singh room, you will go in there and you will see artifacts about Dulip Singh and messages put up.
Okay, you might have to declare an interest there, Brenda. It's an early punt for.
Well, I don't want it named after me. That was an example.
Thank you, Stuart.
No, I just say to David, I think you're going in the right direction with all this, and it's nice to bring everybody up to speed with the work we've done so far. In terms of the naming, I think at Civic we said try to put it out there and ask the public. I see Chris has made a comment in the chat about that as well. It was I who raised the query about Williamson, and I think you picked up on that and brought it forward. I did have a word with Brenda last week about information generally in there. And that's something which we can put some documents together. In terms of the images in the Guildhall Large Court, we will have a little A4 laminated piece of paper so that people understand what those images are and why they're relevant to Thetford. Similarly, if we have a Williamson thing, we can give a brief synopsis of his role within the town and his work generally. And other little bits and pieces in booklet form can be in the tea room for people to have a muse through while they're drinking a lovely cup of tea. My question to David is, in terms of the Guildhall Tea Room franchise, what is the policy procedure at the moment to getting that put out there or to get people in to do it? Because obviously what we want to do is be in position to be up and running as soon as things complete.
Just to pick up on that one then, Stuart, we did have a discussion many moons ago in VEM, and we did discuss the option of bringing it back in-house. And that is something that, although the comment at the time was basically to involve and get the feedback from the previous deliverers, and as I think I have brought back to the committee in the past, they are not happy to continue in any event, which helps us to a degree in terms of not undermining or under appreciating what they have done in the past. But it then opens the door that, again, from a commercial aspect, we will deliver it in-house. And I've looked at the way we can restructure our VEM team, and I'm quite happy and comfortable that we can do that within the staffing that we have with a tweaking of job responsibilities. And we're looking to take that through to personnel. As we said in the past, one of the biggest challenges for us is to support that person in terms of voluntary support and help. And I know, without going into too much information, the town clerk has had some discussions with a potential partner to help us achieve that. So that's our biggest concern in terms of the tea room. So I don't think that, you know, in terms of the comment by Councillor Harvey, I agree, and I'm absolutely
David,
sorry.
David, sorry to interrupt you, but because Chris has put that in the chat.
Yeah.
So just for members of the public, I'm just going to share his comments. Could we go to stalls or public for the names, just so they're kept briefed on what we're discussing? Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
So as long as we can provide a very clear brief in what we're trying to do in terms of the Heritage Hub and the themes that we are trying to develop, then yes. Although I probably think that by doing that, the options are very limited. Certainly, it's not really open to any option apart from the Julep Singh Room in terms of the council chamber, because of the commitment to our Sikh partners in terms of developing that room. The one that probably is open to a lot of discussion is the old art gallery. Because clearly, from a personal perspective, I don't want to see the Guildhall in any of those rooms because they are within the Guildhall. So that confuses the issue. But what we don't really want is a myriad of suggestions in terms of the Guildhall tea room, if we have a very specific theme of trying to tell the story of our judicial history and heritage within that room, simply because of the judge's chair. And there is a clear connection to Williamson within that room, because there's a dedicated plaque embedded in the plaster. So there are, you know, we could make some suggestions and ask them to vote for them, maybe. But as you will see in the next agenda item, when we're talking about reopening plans, we really do have to complete this, because one of the issues that we have to look to is how do we promote it? And if we're still faffing around in terms of naming rooms, it's just going to delay trying to fulfil that objective.
Thank you, David. I'm just going to come to you in a moment, Brenda. I quite like the fact that you just picked up on the fact that acknowledging that the building's judicial past. I think Williamson, if you actually read the plaque, donated £2,000 to the town, which is £500,000 in today's money. And to answer your question, no, I wasn't there when he bequeathed it. But there is another angle to this. If you want to go down a slightly different route, because I think he was an MP and a Secretary of State, a spy master for Charles II, and a friend of Samuel Pepys, from what I recall. But we had two famous convicted prisoners there, Cabourn Holmes. So there is an opportunity, if we wish to go down a slightly different route, to acknowledge its judicial past and acknowledge its two most famous recipients of justice. Brenda.
Yeah, sorry that I'd left it up from before, but I agree with what you've just said. Something to do with justice.
Thank you, Brenda. Tom.
To comment on that, just looking at the ideas that have been put forward and the fact that we're already going to have one of the four rooms named after a key town figure in the Julep Singh room, and as mentioned, the small court has Williamson stuff in it already, so that's another one that was put forward to make sense. And if that's the case, I can see it being ideal, or I say ideal, it would make sense to have that sort of have it be thematic in that, as mentioned, where names are like names of key figures who in the Guildhall or in the town are used for naming the rooms, and if you have exhibits of something for that person attached to that room, then it ties it all together. And it's the same with the large court, if that is down to potentially be renamed. I believe there's the display on the outside of the large court, which is going to be dedicated to Alamin. So in the same way, as much as I seem to be obsessed with him, I'm sure you probably will think that that could easily be named to represent him as well. And then that is 3 of the 4 rooms with the same theme, with an exhibit or a plaque or something attached to the person it's named after on that room. So that could be a route to go down as well.
Thank you for that, Tom. I just going to check. I don't have any other speakers at the moment. So I suppose the first key question for us is whether we actually support the theming of the separate rooms. Is there anybody at Stuart?
Yeah, I think we. I think most people will accept the idea of theming different rooms. Possibly, you know, I'm just thinking, how are we marketing? Whether it's going to be the tea room at Thetford Guildhall, the Julep Sing room at Thetford Guildhall, whether the at Thetford Guildhall bit is a bit passé now, or whether it is something Tom will probably have to tell me about social media, but it's something that you could pick up with. I think, you know, Boudica is somebody we don't have represented across the town, but we do have links with. It's not tied to this particular site, but there will be a picture of Boudica in the large court, so there's another option. The Fyson family, again, is something, a key name, and he bequeathed or gave the money for the mayoral chain, so it's very civic related. So another option there to do it. But I was still like, you know, you might have somebody coming out left field from the public to something that we haven't considered. So I think, as I said, in civic, it's an idea of giving a bit of building the momentum of the publicity of the Guildhall being reopening by giving a little story of, again, public involved with possible naming of a room.
David, you had your hand up.
Yeah, can I jump in? I see Tom's got his hand up, but can I just jump in before Tom? So I think, yeah, I absolutely take on board what you've said, Stuart, and I understand where Councillor Harvey was coming from in terms of engaging the public, and I think we need to do that. What we do need to do, though, is to give the public a bit of a steer. And I think, from the chair intimated a few minutes ago, I think what we need to do is to agree the theme around each room. We can, within our promotion to engage the public as part of the renaming exercise, we give them what the room is, why the room is themed in that way, and therefore it gives them a steer, or more definitive steer. I don't think we could really go out too much on the council chamber. I think we need to say that it is the Julep Sing room, simply because of our commitment to our partners and also our commitment within the Heritage Lottery Fund. But there are 3 rooms and spaces that we can do, and over the general. If we was to look at marketing, Stuart, it would not be the whatever tea room at the Guildhall, but what it would do is it would be part of an overall digital brochure, for instance, and the such and such a tea room is located in the beautiful iconic building of the Guildhall, you know, that kind of message within that brochure. So that's why I'm trying to steer away from the Guildhall in the title of the rooms. But yes, we can do that, Chair. We can certainly go out under that brief. So we give them a steer in terms of theming and where we're trying to get to, and let them come out with those left field suggestions.
Okay, Tom.
Apologies, my hand was I'd forgotten to take it down, but to just quickly deal with to just quickly respond to what Stuart said, and you know, to follow up on what David said about the way you would phrase things. It would be a case of not so much. I think the key thing would be, regardless of how it ends up being themed, is just to make sure that it is not just the person room at all times. Obviously, that is the case for the Julep Sing room, but if you did that for every room, it would probably sound a little flat and wouldn't really describe what it's for. I would feel it'd be important to say. So, for example, if what we end up doing with the old art gallery is making it more of a casual area, then you would name that, say, for example, the Boudica Lounge or something to that, you know, to that degree. That would be that would be what I would do personally to try and make it a bit more clear on each room and differences. But other than that, all game.
Okay, thank you. Do I have anybody else that wishes to speak on this item? Before I try and draw it to a close. Okay, I'll try and summarise this. There is a consensus and willingness that we engage the public. I think there's some disparity in the room with suggestions about the naming of the rooms, although there seems to be a consensus that the rooms should be themed. I think we need to box that one off though before you go to the public. It'd be good to have a clear steer from committee. This is obviously not going to be delivered today, David. How would members like to go forward in providing a clear steer on the name of the rooms? Most of us have put forward suggestions and preferences. Your thoughts or comments, please. Brenda, thank you.
Well, my thoughts are, if it goes out to public and then all councillors look at it, so it might have to go onto the full council agenda, but also engage with other councillors that are not on this committee and that are not on civic. I don't know if there's many left now, but it's getting their input as well, because it's something that they've got to live by as well.
Well, I think take it, but I've just seen your hand up, Chris. I'll come to you in a moment. This is the naming of a venue, so I'm not quite sure, to be honest, why it's also sitting across another committee. Because it is, we're dealing with the branding effectively of one of our venues, so it's very much a VEM responsibility, and it's quite right that we, as the ones delegated to deal with such matters, we would take it forward as a recommendation. I think maybe I was a little bit unclear in my comment. It would be useful if we are going to go to the public that David set out that we should, provide a brief to the public and to our colleagues. But it's difficult to do that if we're unclear ourselves with preferred options. Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, as you well know, I would like this to go out to the public with certain guidelines, of course, because we want to give our residents ownership of their buildings, because they're theirs as well, and to, make them feel part of the Guildhall complex as well.
Thank you, Chris. I don't know, David.
So just trying to wrap it up for you, Chair. I'm quite happy to draft an engagement briefing that can to go out to the public. Both councillors Harvey and Wright are absolutely correct. We need to engage and get that buy-in. But also, as Councillor Wright alluded to earlier, it's a good publicity move as well. Simply by telling people where we're at, what stage we're at. Actually, we are at the very final stage of our refurbishment in terms of the internal works. We are renaming rooms, and we want you to be part of that. So what I'll do is I'll draft an engagement briefing and send it round to all councillors or VEM councillors just for their final approval and suggestion, and then we can get it out to the public.
Thank you, David. Well, this is for them councillors to respond, but I'm quite happy to go to the wider membership, because ultimately this will be steered through by them. I think that brings that item to a close, well, at this juncture anyway. So thank you for that. Okay, item 796/20. Leading on from that item is the venue reopening marketing plans. I hope you've got a glass of water with you, David, because you're doing a lot of talking today. So this is to receive your report, discuss and agree next steps.
So basically, this was identified in our VEM forward planning, and this is stage one of hopefully the reopening of the venues, both Guildhall and Carnegie. So where are we at? Well, we're waiting for the government to give the go-ahead that events and hospitality venues can reopen. We still are in the dark as to when that might be at the moment. But what we have done is had several meetings with partners in terms of if and when that happens, we can deliver some events and activities in a short turnaround time. So we are putting together event listings that we can almost pull off the shelf and get out. We do have to caveat that with an element of caution. Obviously, the track record over the last year has been in and out of different restrictions. And what we don't want to do is to, certainly, we're at a stage now where our bar stock, for instance, is completely gone in terms of shelf life. So we would have to substantially restock the bar areas. And we don't want to do that and impact on future shelf life. So we have to have a real important and good steer in terms of reopening dates. In terms of realism, it would probably take us 3 to 4 weeks to get to a stage where some of the events could be facilitated. And that's not also taking away from those event organisers that are already moving their dates as restrictions change to future dates. So yes, we are looking at how we can reopen, but again, we've got that element of catch-22. We haven't any specific dates. We have used the downtime to conduct extensive refurbishments, both in the Carnegie as well as you're all aware of the Guildhall, and that will certainly improve the facilities going forward and hopefully attract users in the future. But we do need to focus on those final preparations. We've just talked about displays, etc., in the Guildhall, so it's our last stage to get those rooms ready. There are additional items that we might have to realise in terms of additional chairs for the tea room. If we are to facilitate wedding ceremonies in the large court, we don't really want our guests to sit on plastic chairs, so we might have to look at some of those items. If again we are going to be a traditional tea room, we need to look at sort of teacups and teapots, of which other councillors have mentioned to me in the past. We need to improve our service. And one of the things that Baber and I have certainly been looking at is staff uniforms for different settings. So in the tea room, in the Guildhall team will be around a heritage setting, so we do need to look at a new branding for our tea room. There is general events and daywear, so just the presence within the buildings, and then also a more upmarket traditional type staff uniform for civic and wedding events. And then retheming those and renaming those Guildhalls. We've now just agreed an action to take that to the public to help us with that. Some of the elements that we've refurbished in the Carnegie have allowed us new seating areas within the bar, within the bar area of the Carnegie, but we do need to look at soft furnishings and large wall vinyl images to brighten the place up and make it look more attractive. We are looking at those 2 live event programs, and they will be branded under the banner of Live at the Carnegie, which we used effectively in the past, and our new Guildhall Live program that we are now able to deliver with the refurbished venue. Again, we have talked in the past about trying to help with the marketing plans by launching a podcast program. The media suite has taken another significant step forward. The room is now ready to be facilitated with equipment and furniture. We have had real interesting other partners to utilise that space, but also we are now standing up our potential podcast schedule with various different contributors. So as we get near to the time of reopening, we can launch that at a short notice. One of the other things that I'd like to do, and I have discussed it with the chair in the past, is the venues are a very, very difficult place to photograph. And even when hirers have been in the Carnegie, for instance, some of the photos are a lot to be desired at times. So we would need to commission a professional photographer to produce a portfolio of venue settings, and I think that's something that we need to action in the next few weeks to try and allow us to create that digital marketing brochure going forward. So that's where we're at the minute. We are coming to those last elements, and once we've done that, then we can physically initiate the marketing campaigns that we've talked about in previous meetings. But at this moment in time, we are just in that final limbo stage of waiting for the go-ahead to be given. Any questions?
Any comments or questions, colleagues? Okay, in light of that, David, you've asked for some decisions in amongst your presentation. I'm looking at the one on the screen now, to commission a professional photographer to produce a portfolio of venue set in photographs. Something you and I have discussed over the years on numerous occasions. And actually, to me, it's something we need to do. I'd be interested to hear anybody else's comments on that, but it would benefit the venues. Also tied into this, David, you mentioned weddings, and one area that gets overlooked. I wonder if you could update us, please. You mentioned it earlier, the crossover bridge, because if we're doing things such as weddings, I presume that they'll be delivered in the Guildhall, and the wedding party would then make their way on the crossover bridge into the Carnegie for their wedding breakfast and their entertainment. And it obviously needs a little bit of TLC. I wonder if you can update us to any plans with that area.
Yeah, not wanting to get bogged down on a comprehensive discussion in this meeting, but again, we have had discussions in the past, Chair, of trying to ensure that the exterior of the building reflects all the work and improvements that we've done inside. Now, one of the anomalies in our committee process is that VEM is responsible for the internals, ALP is responsible for the externals. And the area that you're alluding to, which is the crossover bridge from Guildhall and Carnegie, is going to be a very important area in the future. Certainly if we have wedding ceremonies in the Guildhall, guests may want to transfer from the wedding ceremony to the wedding reception in the Carnegie, and one of those safe routes would be across the crossover bridge. Now, one of the issues that we are having to address in terms of the exterior of the building is our roof, and there is nothing we can do in terms of the crossover bridge until we've addressed that problem. So again, one of the areas that I'd like to pursue in the future, and this is not the right meeting to do that at this moment in time, is to look at whether our responsibilities going forward, and we did conduct a vast piece of work in terms of restructuring committees, that the venues and marketing committee, which will be renamed after April the 1st, also takes on the responsibilities of both internal and external issues. So we can facilitate these problems and hopefully improve the whole concept going forward a lot more easier, rather than going through a two-committee process. But that's something to be discussed at later. But certainly, Chair, that is very much on the forefront of our plans for the future.
Thank you. That's appreciated. Is there anybody else that wishes to make a comment? Okay. So I take it you're happy with the direction we're heading, colleagues? You're happy that we commission a professional photographer to produce a portfolio? Brenda, was you about to speak?
Well, I was just going to say, I agree. We do need a professional. I just wondered how that would work. We wouldn't actually pay him. He would get his commission from the people that are having the wedding? Is that the way that works?
No, yeah,
Sorry, David. As I understand it, Brenda, this is about creating a portfolio of venue photographs. So, for instance, you could have a canvas print of whatever size you deemed necessary, maybe showing the Carnegie being used for an event like a wedding. So it shows people how the venues can be used. Am I correct in that, David?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's taking those various different venue settings that we can deliver to encourage people to hire, because it would be part of a digital brochure going forward. So we need to make sure. I know in the past that when we've had theatre shows, for example, there are people that have taken photos of the stage, and because of the lighting, etc., you know, it's very difficult to do. We are very gifted, I suppose, in terms of having lots of local people that actually have taken some fantastic photos of our local scenes, buildings, etc., etc. So I think that, you know, we're not going to be short of people that can help us in this way, but it's not so much for the actual event, it's for us to help us market the venues. So we need those official photos to help.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I misheard him. I think
No.
it's because he brought it in with weddings, and I've
you.
just read it. Sorry.
No, thank you. It's always best to seek the clarification. Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to comment? Okay, so I think there's an action there for you, David, to get that portfolio of photographs underway. And if nobody else wishes to comment, I'm going to close that item. Thank you. Okay. Item 797/20 is the agenda, the VEM agenda forward plan. You all would have received a copy. This is just our body of work going forward. You can see it's been an upgrade, a small upgrade. So the green are the projects completed, amber are your projects that are in progress, and if there isn't a colour associated with it, then it means they're forthcoming agenda items. You can see what we've got coming up in March, April and May. March particularly looks busy. Nothing's been put into the agenda yet for June and July. August we don't meet, and you will see it is a rolling calendar. So September next month will appear at the end of your 12 columns, and we will be looking at budgets for 22-23. David's kindly added a key, so you got an indication of what was discussed and outcomes. Open to comment, or it's just a note, really, colleagues. So if you have any comments, please speak. Who's got a comment, Stuart? You leant forward.
No, I'm happy to go. I think it's just one of those things that things will pop up, and we'll bring things through and overlap onto the following month as necessary. So,
thank you. Well, thank you. Without any other comments, then we just note that, colleagues. Thank you. So we have item 798, which is community engagement. Discuss and agree any consultation or media release required. I am mindful that we've still got one item that has been deferred to the end of the agenda. So at this stage, is there anything anyone wishes to suggest? Okay, I'm going to move on then to item 799/20, committee officers update. David, is there any update for you since the agenda was released?
No, nothing to report.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to our final item for today. It's item 792/20, website review, to receive an update and discuss a possible new format. Over to you, David.
Okay, so if I can just go back to relevant slides. So we did discuss in our previous meetings at stage one. There was a suggestion to create a new website or a more cleaner and simple design, because their councillors had raised issues before the current site, and it is 7 years old, I think 6 to 7 years old. So things change, technology moves on, etc. But it was probably too difficult to navigate in terms of finding more appropriate statutory items such as meetings and agendas and things like that. So we did some research and we looked at various different other town councils, and they definitely have more simpler and cleaner sites in terms of covering those statutory items. We looked at and we came to an agreement that we would look at a particular site going forward. So we've discussed it with relevant web designers. We'd already discussed this with our current provider in the past, and they have put forward some suggestions of how we can tackle that. And we have had discussions with another web designer who has also offered up options and ideas. So we are now at stage 2, which is a case of making a decision as to whether we pursue that in the future and when we pursue that in the future. There are other websites, as Joe alluded to earlier in the meeting, that he is developing a web portal, if you like, that this eventual website or our current website can link into to take us away from that more cleaner and simple format into the all singing, all dancing venue websites, for example. So in the future, the town council's website will cover areas such as your council, which are to do with the services, the councillors, the ward maps, the meetings and minutes. I did see, and I'm not sure whether the chair shared this or not, but I did see on Facebook there was a sort of a graphic that was shared in terms of identifying the county council, the district council and the town council's services that they provide. And there were various different icons that related to those services. And again, it would be in this section that we could replicate something like that. There are numerous times on social media where the residents get confused across the 3 councils who's responsible for what. And I think that's a nice, simple way of identifying whose responsibility it is. So again, this area would cover those kind of things. The venues again would give some images and basic information, and then link through to the web portals that would allow them to book tickets, for instance, look at up and coming event listings and things. Places of interest, again, this would link to the local museums. It would offer up trails. And again, interactive maps and things like that. The history area, and on our current website, we have got quite significant information about our history and heritage. Again, this area would be included in that. And also, again, Joe and Tom have been developing our media channels, such as our videos and YouTube links and things like that. Photo galleries, podcasts are going to be something in the future. And this is the area it would be housed going forward. So even though there's quite a lot of information there, it does keep it nice and clean and simple, and also replicate some of the websites that we looked at in the past as a committee and enjoyed. So again, if you're happy to agree with these certain areas, then we can take it forward to stage 3, which would be actually facilitating the new web development, if that's the way we're going to go through. I'll just have a quick break and a glass of water and open to questions.
Brenda.
Yeah, just a quick one, really. I don't know how to explain this. Whatever system that we use, can you make sure that dummies can use it? Because sometimes you go onto these web pages, I've been on quite a few recently, and you find it really hard to get round, and in the end you give up. So it, when Tom sets something up, he's got to think that he knows what he's doing. What if he didn't know what he was doing? How easy is it? That's it, really.
Tom, would you like to respond to that? I suspect Dave is still drinking his glass of water.
Yeah, sorry. So in regards to trying to make things as easy as possible to keep sort of make it as user friendly as possible, to use the correct terms, I don't think that would be the most difficult thing for us to do in the world. There is a degree of stuff in the case of forwarding things to the right places, forwarding people to the right places. There's a degree of categorization, as obviously already outlined here. You would want to set it out in such a way. And this is probably what the web designers told David as well. You want to set it out in such a way that it doesn't take more than half a dozen clicks to get to the right place. It is literally, you're after such a, if for example, if you're looking to say find out information about meetings coming up, you click on the big button that says council, bang, and then there is a big title, a big heading that says meetings. So you click that, bang, 2 clicks, you're at the key point that you're after. And from there, it's just making sure that each individual page is not only clear, but also consistent as well, which again will all be handled by the web design. So in theory, once the website is redone, it'll be a lot easier to keep tabs on. It'll be a lot easier to follow what's going where as well.
Thank you, Tom. Brenda, would you like to come back? Oh, yeah.
No, just I think Tom knows where I'm coming from, and I think he understands. So, yeah, I just think it's fantastic, all the work they're actually doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, I've helped Drew with tablets enough times to know where it's coming from. So.
Thank you, Tom. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this item? Okay, and you'll be pleased to know I don't have anything further to add. I've been talking to Dave and the team quite regularly about this, so I feel kept up to speed. So I appreciate the efforts that are going on. So one last call for anybody that wishes to make a comment. Okay, well, I'm going to close that item, colleagues, then. Thank you for bringing that forward and for your comments all. That actually concludes our business for today. Thank you for everyone that made a contribution throughout the meeting. Stay safe and keep well. Thank you.